In 2024, researchers applied the most advanced artificial intelligence motion analysis technology to the Patterson-Gimlin film, the 57-year-old footage showing an alleged Bigfoot walking through Bluff Creek, California. Subscribe now because these AI algorithms can detect deep fakes, identify computer-generated imagery, and expose costume tells that human eyes miss. The AI was designed to either confirm this is obviously a man in a suit or prove it shows a real biological entity. Instead, the results were far more disturbing. The AI found no evidence of fakery but couldn't identify what species it shows because the biomechanics don't match anything in nature. This changes everything. The 2024 artificial intelligence analysis of the Patterson-Gimlin film utilized motion tracking algorithms originally developed for detecting CGI manipulation and deepfake videos in modern digital media. Technology specifically designed to identify artificial movement patterns that betray computer-generated imagery or people wearing costumes pretending to be something else. These sophisticated algorithms analyze how flesh, muscle, and fat tissue move under skin and fur, comparing observed movement to massive databases of real biological entities and known artificial recreations to flag inconsistencies invisible to human observers. When applied to the 59 seconds of 16mm film shot on October 20th, 1967, the AI systems returned results that confused researchers because the findings didn't match either expected outcome. The algorithms found zero evidence of costume tells that universally appear when humans wear fursuits. No bunching or wrinkling at joint locations including elbows, knees, shoulders, and hips where fabric inevitably creases when people move. No proportion inconsistencies where human skeletal structure becomes apparent underneath padding. No unnatural fur movement showing clumping and shifting as padding underneath compresses and releases. No human-positioned center of gravity creating the distinctive bipedal gait pattern that betrays a person walking despite attempts to move differently. Instead, the AI motion analysis detected what it classified as flesh and muscle tissue shifting under fur in patterns consistent with real biological entities. The figure's movement showed what algorithms interpreted as actual muscle groups contracting and relaxing, not padding compressing, with subtle shifts in surface contour suggesting muscle tissue underneath rather than fabric over a human frame. The proportions flagged as non-human by every measurement the AI applied. The arms measured longer than human proportions allow. The torso registered broader than human skeletal structure permits. The legs showed shorter relative length compared to torso dimensions than human anatomy produces. Most significantly, the AI detected muscle masses moving in the upper back and shoulder region that don't correspond to human muscular anatomy. Large tissue groups flexing and shifting during movement in configurations impossible for humans to possess regardless of physical conditioning. These weren't gross movements that padding or prosthetics could fake. They were subtle contour changes suggesting actual biological tissue contracting and relaxing in response to movement demands. The AI analysis essentially reported, "This appears to be a real physical entity with coherent biomechanical movement, but I cannot identify what species it represents because the movement patterns don't match any organism in my training database." That conclusion represents the most disturbing possible outcome because it means modern technology designed specifically to expose fakery found nothing fake, yet simultaneously couldn't verify what the footage actually shows. The Patterson-Gimlin film occupies unique territory in cryptozoology as the only alleged cryptid footage that has remained under serious scientific consideration for over half a century, despite thousands of researchers attempting to definitively debunk it using every available analytical technique. Most purported Bigfoot videos get exposed quickly as obvious costumes, misidentified animals, deliberately fabricated hoaxes, or computer-generated imagery created for entertainment purposes. The Patterson-Gimlin film has resisted definitive debunking for 57 years, despite intense scrutiny from skeptics, scientists, costume experts, and special effects professionals, all motivated to solve the mystery one way or another. The basic facts have remained consistent since 1967. Roger Patterson was a rodeo rider and small-time self-published author who had become obsessed with Bigfoot after reading about sightings in Northern California forests. He had written a book about the phenomenon and was producing a low-budget documentary film, hoping to investigate reports and possibly capture evidence. Bob Gimlin was an experienced outdoorsman and horse wrangler who agreed to accompany Patterson into wilderness areas, partly to keep Patterson safe in dangerous terrain, and partly because the mystery intrigued him despite his initial skepticism. On October 20th, 1967, They rode horses into Bluff Creek area where recent Bigfoot sightings had been reported and alleged footprints discovered. According to their consistent account told hundreds of times over subsequent decades, they rounded a bend near a fallen tree and saw a large, hair-covered figure crouched by the creek. Patterson's horse spooked violently and reared. Patterson dismounted quickly, grabbed his rented 16mm camera from his saddlebag, and ran toward the creature while attempting to film with shaking hands. The footage shows a bulky, hair-covered bipedal figure walking away from camera position with distinctive gait, shoulders back, arms swinging, fluid but powerful movement suggesting considerable mass and strength. The creature was later estimated at approximately 7 feet 4 inches tall based on measurements taken at the site comparing the figure's height to surrounding vegetation and logs. At roughly 28 seconds into the footage, the creature turns its upper body and looks directly at the camera. Frame 352 became the most iconic and analyzed image in Bigfoot research, showing what appears to be a massive primate face looking toward the camera with apparent awareness of being filmed. The creature then continues walking with purpose and disappears into the forest tree line. Patterson and Gimlin claimed they attempted to track the creature as far as terrain allowed, but it moved through areas where horses couldn't follow safely. In 2002, a man named Greg Long published a book claiming to have definitively solved the Patterson-Gimlin mystery through interviews with alleged participants in what he asserted was an elaborate hoax. According to Long's investigation, a man named Bob Hieronymus wore a costume specifically made by Hollywood costume designer Philip Morris, and Roger Patterson paid Hieronymus $1,000 to walk through the creek bed while being filmed, creating what would become the most famous cryptid footage in history. This seemed like the smoking gun revelation that would finally close the case after 35 years of debate, providing definitive proof the film showed nothing more than a simple costume hoax. However, the story immediately began falling apart under even basic scrutiny, as details didn't align and evidence couldn't be produced. Hieronymus claimed the suit was constructed from horsehide and synthetic fur, and that it had a terrible smell he remembered vividly from wearing it. Philip Morris claimed he sold Patterson a suit made from synthetic nylon and dinyl fur for $435. Those are fundamentally contradictory descriptions of what is supposedly the same costume. Different materials, different construction, incompatible details. More problematically, neither Hieronymus nor Morris could produce the actual suit itself, despite it being the single piece of physical evidence that would definitively prove their claims. No photographs documenting the suit's construction or sale. No receipts or financial records showing the transaction. No physical evidence whatsoever that the costume ever existed beyond their verbal claims made 35 years after the alleged event. Hieronymus's descriptions of how the filming occurred contradicted known facts about the site, the terrain, and details visible in the footage itself. His account of where he put on the costume, how he walked, and what he could see through the mask didn't match the logistics of the actual location or the movement shown in the film. Philip Morris attempted to recreate the suit from memory to demonstrate how it was constructed. The recreation looked absolutely nothing like what appears in the Patterson-Gimlin film. The proportions were obviously wrong. The fur was clearly artificial and moved unnaturally. When someone wore the recreation suit and attempted to walk like the creature in the original film, it looked immediately and obviously fake to anyone comparing the two. Here is where the AI analysis revealed something crucial about the Morris recreation attempt. When the same motion analysis algorithms that had examined the original Patterson-Gimlin film were applied to footage of someone wearing Morris's recreation suit, the AI immediately flagged it as artificial with high confidence. The suit bunched at joints exactly as expected for a costume. The proportions were clearly a human frame with padding. The movement followed standard human biomechanical patterns. Everything the AI had not found in the original 1967 footage was immediately apparent and easily detected in the recreation attempt. The artificial intelligence analysis revealed specific biomechanical characteristics in the Patterson-Gimlin film that would have been extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to fake using costume technology available in 1967, and that remained challenging to replicate convincingly, even with modern special effects capabilities. The stride length and vertical displacement of the hip structure during walking, shown in the footage, do not match human gait patterns according to the AI's comparative analysis against databases of human movement. When humans walk, our hips move in a characteristic figure-8 pattern, and our center of gravity shifts in predictable ways, determined by our skeletal structure and muscle attachment points. The creature in the film demonstrates different mechanics, with hips remaining more level throughout the stride cycle, suggesting either a radically different skeletal structure or a center of gravity positioned differently than human anatomy allows. The stride length measures longer relative to apparent leg length than human biomechanics can produce. and the weight distribution during each step suggests body mass significantly greater than what the apparent height would indicate for a human being. The arm swing pattern also deviates from human norms in ways that are extremely difficult for people to consciously alter. Human arms swing naturally in opposition to leg movement when we walk, right arm forward when left leg is forward, as an automatic biomechanical function that helps maintain balance and is controlled by central pattern generators in the spinal cord rather than conscious thought. This automatic pattern is extraordinarily difficult to suppress or significantly modify even with deliberate effort and training. The creature in the film shows a different arm swing pattern, with arms swinging more from shoulder joints and displaying less elbow flexion than humans typically demonstrate during walking. Most tellingly, from a hoax detection perspective, the AI analysis found evidence of muscle groups moving under the fur that do not match human anatomical structure. Large muscle masses in the upper back and shoulder region appear to flex and shift during movement in configurations that would be impossible for a human wearing a costume to replicate regardless of padding or prosthetics. These are not gross movements of the entire torso that could theoretically be faked with sophisticated padding. They are subtle shifts in surface contour at specific locations, suggesting actual muscle tissue contracting and relaxing in response to movement demands. The technology to create this level of realistic muscle simulation under fur didn't exist in 1967. Modern Hollywood productions with multi-million-dollar budgets struggle to achieve this level of realistic muscle movement, even with computer-generated imagery assistance, advanced animatronics, and sophisticated practical effects. Yet somehow this appears in 16mm film shot by a rodeo rider with a rented camera in remote California forest. Either Roger Patterson somehow created or commissioned costume effects that exceeded Hollywood capabilities of his era by substantial margins, or the film shows something that wasn't a costume. Patterson and Gimlin made plaster casts of footprints they found at the Bluff Creek site after the creature disappeared into the forest, and these casts have been preserved in research collections where they've been analyzed repeatedly over subsequent decades using increasingly sophisticated techniques. The casts show several characteristics that are extremely difficult to explain as hoaxed prints created by someone trying to fake Bigfoot evidence. Most significantly, they demonstrate what appears to be a flexible midfoot or instep region where the foot shows compression and movement, suggesting it flexes during walking rather than remaining rigid like human feet. When humans walk, our feet function essentially as rigid levers. The arch structure is fixed by ligaments and doesn't flex in the middle, and force transfers from heel strike through the rigid foot structure to toe off in a consistent pattern determined by our skeletal anatomy. Great apes, including gorillas and chimpanzees, have mobile midfoot structures that flex during walking, allowing their feet to grip surfaces and push off in ways human feet cannot accomplish, because our feet evolved for different locomotion demands. The footprint casts from the Patterson-Gimlin site show this ape-like flexibility with compression patterns in the midfoot region, indicating the foot structure was bending during the step rather than remaining rigid. Creating fake footprints with this specific characteristic would be extraordinarily difficult and would require detailed understanding of primate foot biomechanics that wasn't widely available outside specialist primatology research in 1967. You would need to understand exactly how ape feet differ from human feet biomechanically, design a mechanism capable of creating appropriate compression patterns in the correct locations while walking, and operate this mechanism while making prints in difficult terrain, including soft soil, sand, and areas with vegetation that would affect how prints formed. The artificial intelligence analysis of the footprint casts used three-dimensional modeling to reconstruct the force distribution patterns required to create the observed compression characteristics and depth variations visible in the plaster casts. The computational results suggest a body weight of approximately 540 to 760 pounds distributed across the foot, in patterns that don't match human gait mechanics, far heavier than a human could be while still maintaining the height and proportions shown in the film footage. The force distribution across different regions of the footprint also deviates from human walking patterns in ways that again suggest different biomechanical structure or weight distribution. A human making fake prints would almost certainly create compression patterns matching human gait mechanics, because that's how humans naturally walk, and consciously altering force distribution across your foot while walking through difficult terrain would be extraordinarily challenging, even if you understood what patterns you were trying to create. Frame 352, the moment when the creature turns and looks directly at the camera, has been subjected to particularly intense analysis over the decades and became the focus of specialized artificial intelligence examination using facial recognition algorithms, muscle movement detection software, and eye-tracking analysis systems. What these AI systems revealed about this single moment in the footage carries disturbing implications about either the sophistication of a potential hoax or the nature of what was actually filmed. The head turn itself appears to be a natural fluid motion involving coordinated movement of the neck, shoulders, and upper torso in biomechanically consistent patterns. The timing and mechanics of the turn match what AI expects to see when a real organism looks toward a stimulus that has caught its attention, not the stiff mechanical rotation that would result from someone wearing a mask, turning their head inside a costume. The facial features, what can be resolved through the fur and at the available resolution of 16mm film, do not show the rigid mask-like quality that AI algorithms expect when analyzing costume heads or prosthetic faces. Most significantly and most disturbing, high-resolution scans of frame 352 and surrounding frames suggest the creature's eyes appear to track and focus on the camera as the head turns. This is an extraordinarily subtle detail that wasn't noticed in earlier analyses conducted by human observers, but became apparent when AI eye-tracking algorithms were applied to the footage. The eyes don't simply point in a direction. They appear to focus on the camera specifically and follow its position as the creature completes its turn. This kind of realistic eye movement was almost impossible to fake with 1967 costume technology and remains difficult to achieve convincingly, even with modern animatronics and digital effects. Human eyes move in very specific ways when focusing on objects, with micro-movements and pupil dilation responses that are controlled by autonomic nervous system functions rather than conscious control. Faking realistic eye movement requires either eyes that are actually looking at something, real eyes in a real creature, sophisticated animatronic systems that didn't exist in 1967, or computer-generated imagery that definitely didn't exist in 1967. Yet the AI analysis suggests the eyes in frame 352 are genuinely tracking the camera, not simply pointing in its general direction, but actually focusing on it as a real visual target. This single detail, if confirmed by additional analysis, would be extraordinarily difficult to explain within a hoax framework unless we posit costume capabilities far beyond what was available in that era. The artificial intelligence analysis has essentially narrowed the Patterson-Gimlin film to 3 possible explanations, and each one carries deeply problematic implications that challenge our understanding in different ways. Possibility 1. The film shows a hoax so extraordinarily sophisticated that it exceeded the costume and special effects capabilities of 1967 by substantial margins, has never been successfully replicated even with modern technology and techniques, left physical evidence in the form of footprints that are biomechanically consistent with the film subject, and fooled artificial intelligence analysis systems specifically designed to detect exactly this type of fakery. This explanation is theoretically possible, but requires believing that Roger Patterson, a rodeo rider making a low-budget documentary with minimal financial resources, somehow created or commissioned a costume that professional Hollywood effects houses with multi-million-dollar budgets cannot match 57 years later. It requires believing he faked footprints with biomechanical characteristics, including flexible midfoot structures that weren't understood in primate research until years after the film was made. It requires believing he accomplished all this despite having no obvious means to fund such a sophisticated operation and despite having no background in special effects, costume design, or primate anatomy. And it requires believing that AI systems trained on millions of examples of real and fake movement cannot detect the hoax, despite being specifically designed for this purpose. Possibility 2. The film shows genuine footage of a real unknown species of large bipedal primate living in North America, which is what Bigfoot researchers have claimed for decades. This explanation solves the costume problem and explains why the biomechanics appear real, because they are real, captured on film during a chance encounter in remote wilderness. However, this explanation carries its own substantial problems. Despite thousands of reported sightings across decades, we have no bodies, no bones, no skeletal remains, and no DNA that definitively proves the existence of such a species according to scientific standards. Modern trail cameras deployed throughout North American forests and environmental DNA sampling techniques that can detect species from microscopic biological traces should have confirmed these creatures if they exist in the population numbers that sighting reports suggest. The fossil record shows no evidence of large bipedal primates ever existing in North America at any point in geological history. The AI analysis doesn't solve these fundamental problems. problems. It just confirms that if this is a real creature, its biomechanics are consistent with a large bipedal primate of unknown type. But that doesn't explain how such a species could exist undetected in an era of satellite mapping, widespread camera deployment, and intensive biological surveys of North American ecosystems. Possibility 3, and this is where the implications become truly strange. We are asking fundamentally wrong questions about what the Patterson-Gimlin film shows. Bob Gimlin is still alive at 92 years old and has been asked about the Patterson-Gimlin film thousands of times over the past 57 years by researchers, skeptics, journalists, documentary filmmakers, and paranormal investigators, all hoping to find inconsistencies or get him to admit to a hoax. His story has never changed in any substantial detail across more than half a century of questioning. He maintains he saw what he saw that day in October 1967. Roger Patterson, who died in 1972, just 5 years after filming the footage, maintained until his death that the film was genuine documentation of a real creature encountered by chance. He passed a polygraph test, though skeptics note polygraphs aren't definitive. Most significantly, neither Patterson nor Gimlin ever recanted or admitted to a hoax, even when offered substantial money to do so. Multiple researchers approached both men with payment offers in exchange for confession that the film was staged, and both consistently refused while maintaining their original account. This pattern is unusual for hoaxes because fabricated stories typically fall apart over time as participants' memories become inconsistent or people seek profit from revealing truth. The footprint casts remain in research collections, still showing puzzling midfoot flexibility. The film has been analyzed using every forensic technique developed over 57 years, scanned at progressively higher resolutions, subjected to photographic analysis, motion analysis, anatomical analysis, and now artificial intelligence analysis. It remains stubbornly unresolved.